Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But if you're ready to level up your life and get results that truly matter in your health, business, mindset, and relationships, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to Scheer Madness, where we have unscripted, real conversations with the world's top athletes, entrepreneurs, and coaches. Discover real-world and tactical advice from the best in the business. Let's go. So for those who don't know who the Setema Gali is, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, first of all, let me say thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate and acknowledge you for the podcast and for having me on here. So I'm grateful to be here. I'll start back to college football, Brigham Young University. Went to the New England Patriots, had a super short, NFL stands for not for long. So it was the probably shortest career in the NFL. However, I was privileged to get a Super Bowl ring. I was part of the Super Bowl 36 New England Patriots. That was almost 20 years ago. And, when I finished in the NFL, I loved the money, and I knew I wanted to do something bigger than just kind of like, settle in. So I had a buddy of mine was doing mortgages, and he showed me a check. It was like 30 grand. And I was like, oh my gosh, man. I was like NFL money. I was like, dude, it's amazing. Like, well, did you do that like last year? And he said, I did that last month. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? So he tells me about mortgages. And back in 03, 04, I jumped into mortgages. And I took what I did in football and I applied it to the mortgage industry. Hard work, goals, tenacity, doing the work. And it took off, right? Over a 4-year run, we made great money, had the brand new cars and the brand new homes. And we had properties all over the country. And I had a great team. But in my heart, Rachel, I knew that there was something more for me. And maybe for the listeners, like there's a calling in your heart. And I say a calling because I feel that way. Like there's a mission, a purpose, there's something I'm supposed to do. And I knew it wasn't just making all the money I was making. It had to do with helping people. So as I transitioned out, we were hit by the mortgage, real estate collapse back in 08. A lot of people didn't go through that. I went through it. So for me right now, the quarantine and COVID-19, this is like round 2. And I'm excited because I've been through that already. Like I know what it's like to get hammered and to get beat down. So we lost everything. And again, when I say lost everything, we were trying to figure out how to put food on our table, how to pay our rent. We got evicted from our home. We had our cars repossessed. Every real estate property that I owned was taken. And, over the course of a few years from 08, 09, 10, and 11, I ended up selling my Super Bowl ring and crying like a baby because I was like, you don't go win a Super Bowl. It's hard to win a Super Bowl. And to be on that team. And I had to sell my ring for cash. I filed a bankruptcy. I was depressed and overweight and miserable. And, that was 2010, 2011. And today I live here in Southern California. I love my life. I love what I do as a coach, as an author, as a speaker. And we have clients all over the world. And I'm doing what I feel, what I was called to do, which is truly make a difference in someone's life, get them to see things they can't see, and help them to move their life forward. So, married my best friend, love my life, the love of my life. We got 3 sons. And like this morning, we just, 6:30 woke him up, went on our little morning hike, and we're like in the groove. So that's who Setema is.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I can relate to you on the feeling of as if there's something greater out there for you, like there's something you're supposed to be doing and you're really not sure what it is yet. And I think a lot of people have that innate feeling within them. Maybe they're stuck in a job they don't want to be in. Maybe it's a relationship, or they're just overall depressed and unhappy with their life. And they feel like there's something much greater out there for them. With everything that you went through, losing completely everything, having to sell your Super Bowl ring and just at a very, very low point, do you feel like you would be doing all that you are doing today, though, if you weren't to go through that period where you had to have everything taken away from you and then to build it back up?
I definitely would say that because of everything that I went through, because of the adversity, because of the challenges, to file a bankruptcy, to lose I had like 4 or 5 cars at the time. We had homes from the East Coast to the West Coast. I had office space and leases and teams. That's hard. And we hear people's stories. I've heard some stories on your podcast of other people, and even your story. When I heard your story for the first time, I was inspired. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, it's amazing. And I sometimes think we take it for granted of how actually tough this. Like we tell the story, right? We're like, here's the story, but it's hard. Like, and no, I don't know if I'm here without that. And I could boldly say, without question, going through the dark times, the depression, even like I'll say this, I've shared this before, even like where you kind of like feel like maybe I shouldn't be around, maybe life would be better if I wasn't here. And you look at your life insurance policies, you're trying to figure out how to like just end your life because it's so hard. Going through all of that and overcoming it and like getting through it and rising and triumphing, the triumph from the tragedy has shaped a lot of who I am today. So yeah, if you're going through a hard time out there, if someone's going through challenges, which we all are, right? They're, to different degrees. Just know it's going to serve you in the future. It's going to make a difference for you. It's going to mold you. It's going to shape you. It's going to refine you. And that's why, again, I'm here with you, and we're doing the things that we're doing in our businesses and changing lives.
I think it's empowering, and it shows you the potential that you really have, because if everything's only ever perfect in life, you don't really know what you're truly capable of, and you're never really able to push yourself. I can look back at my own life, and prior to going over a breakup where I felt like my entire world was thrown upside down. I mean, I was was with the guy I was with since I was 19 years old, and then going through a breakup at age 26, it felt like my entire adult life I had known nothing else but that. So for me, it was a self-discovery, figuring out how to live alone. And not a lot of people will maybe understand my circumstance, but I definitely think they can relate to feeling like they're unsure of direction on where to go, but then having to navigate and figure out what it is that you need to do to come out on top. You always have two choices, whether you want to let it consume you. I remember you telling me a story, the story of the two brothers, with the father was the alcoholic. And that's something that's always stuck with me. It was the two siblings, and they all, I'm going to butcher this, but it was, you want to tell the story?
Yeah, just, I've heard this a couple of times, and I'm like, oh my gosh, right? You got these two guys, and you hear one guy who's super successful. Like he's like the top of his class, far education, impacting, financially wealthy, super kind and happy. And people are like, how did you do this? And he says, because when I grew up, my father was an alcoholic, and he was abusive verbally towards us. He didn't treat our mom right. And because of that, he's like, I decided who I wanted to be. Go to the next guy. This guy is, out. He's addicted to drugs, and he's just this full-blown alcoholic, and he's like basically living in a cardboard box down by the river kind of guy. And they said, how did you get here? And he says, it's because my father was an alcoholic and he was verbally abusive. It's because of him. Both these guys are brothers, raised in the same home, hearing the same messages, but one takes it and says, I don't want that. I want to be something else. The other guy's like, he couldn't get out of what they would call a victim mindset, where it's someone else's fault. And I've never forgot that, because I heard your story on the stage at Ryan's, and I'm like, wow, it's not just like you can overcome so much if you're willing to just say, here's where I am, here's what I want, what's it going to take to go get that, and I'm going to go do that.
Yeah, I love that story. And as you know, it relates to me on a personal level, because I came from being neglected as a child. My dad was mentally ill. My mom was out partying, drinking, and I basically had to raise myself. And my family history is falling into the pattern of drugs and alcohol and, not really doing a whole lot with your life. Me, on the other hand, I just had this innate drive to become something. And I think part of it was to prove something to myself, that I wanted to be nothing like the rest of my family. So I remember hearing that story about the two siblings, that the father was an alcoholic, and I was like, that's me, like that's me to the T. And but kind of going back to your story, it is the lows that show us what we're truly capable of in life. And I think that's what I've discovered with myself, even because I was very much on autopilot before I went through everything. I mean, I was fine, nothing I was wrong in my life, but I wasn't pushing myself nearly to what I was capable of what my potential truly was. And now I'm in a position where, honestly, I feel incredible right now, because I'm in a place where I'm like, what is it that I want? And I'm going to go after, and I'm going to get it. I'm like, I'm the driver in my life right now. And that's kind of, I wrote a post about that earlier today. And it's just kind of like, you are in control. We allow our environment, we allow our body, we allow all these other circumstances to put us in this little box, but it's only ourselves putting us in this box. And once you realize what your potential is and the power that you have to create whatever it is that you want with your life, incredible things start to happen just by shifting the mind. So I'm always talking about how important health is, and a lot of physicians are even always looking at, okay, we need to work on the body, we need to work on all these different things. But I think it's the mental health ultimately that matters most, which even oftentimes leads to a lot of the physical ailments that we experience as well too.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've gone through the lows of lows, and then you've come back out on top. What are some of the shifts that you made in your life during that time that allowed you to, build the life that you currently have today? A successful coach, an incredible father, speaking on stages all over the world. What has allowed you, what shifted in you during that time to get you where you're at?
Great question. So, you hear stories about people where they get to a point where they're just like, enough is enough, right? I'm done. Enough is enough. And that was me in 2011. In 2011, again, I'd gone through 2008, all of 8, all of 9, all of 10 into 2011. So we're about 3.5, almost 4 years of just average, being mediocre. And, you can convince yourself for a while. You can, like human beings, we can convince ourselves to extremes. Like I was like, yeah, it's not that bad. We made our millions. We made our multi-millions back in the real estate mortgage days. Yeah. Yeah. I've already, and I kind of convinced myself and that I was okay. It wasn't too bad, but there was two things. There was a piece of me that was like, no, Setema, you were born to do more. And then in 2011, we were negative 700 in the bank account. Like they just kept pinging us, like, insufficient funds, and the bank just kept piling on and we bounced a check. And I was like, dude, I don't know. And I was praying to God. I mean, I was praying my heart and soul out. And someone came to me and was like, hey, I want you to come knock doors. Now, this was the 3rd year in a row that he was trying to recruit me to go be a door-to-door salesman. In my mind, I'm like, and I'm a global speaker. I'm a Super Bowl champion. I've already made my money. There's no way in my mid to late 30s, I'm going to go knock doors as a door-to-door salesman. Well, but you know what? Like, I've been praying, and I felt like God was like, you need to go knock. And this guy was incredible. He recruited me, and I was afraid. And the shift that took place was he asked this question. He says, man, I've been trying to, he's like, you are on the top of my list. And if I can get you to come knock doors, I just know you'd kill it. He's like, what do you need to make in 4 months? Like, what would you have to make over the next 4 months? Because that was it. It was 4 months of knocking doors. And I told him a number. I said, if I can make 6 figures in 4 months, I'd come do it. And he goes, done. You can do that. I'm like, really? He's like, and here, so that was the first shift, was like, I just was like, man, I don't like where I'm at. I hated life. He asked my wife, I was miserable. because I was capable of more. The second shift was when he said, he goes, just listen to me. If you want to make X amount, you're going to have to do these things. And he made a list. And we were at a sushi shop, and I was writing everything down on the brown paper on top of the tables. I'm like writing, taking notes. And he says, if you can do these things, you can go make six figures. And, again, I had already made multiple, like into the seven figures. So I already knew what that was like. And, after 4 years, here's another shift. When you get beat up for long enough and you kind of give in, you start to believe those, what we call stories. You start to believe, well, maybe my best days are behind me. Well, maybe, maybe I'm just supposed to be grateful and just, maybe I'm not supposed to be wealthy. I mean, I had those stories running. So first shift, enough is enough. You got to get to a point where you're like, dude, I want something more. Like, I don't like this. I hate this. And hate's a strong word. You better be a point where you're like, I hate where I'm at physically, or I hate where I'm at financially, or I hate and I want more. Second shift, again, I had a mentor. He was my mentor. He recruited me, and it made a massive difference for me. And I'd say that the third shift was, I never forget, one of his mentors, super wealthy guy, super happy guy. And he said this, and I took this, and that's why I use it all the time. He said, Setema, the piper will be had. I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, yeah, the piper's going to get paid now, or the piper's going to get paid later. Either way, the piper's going to get paid. And I heard that, and it like struck me with such force, like just like, ugh. I was like, well, let me go pay the piper now. Mm-hmm. And so I went, and that was a big shift for me as I flew to South Carolina, and I went and paid the piper that summer. And man, every time I think about knocking doors, I get emotional, Rachel, because it was hard. Like, that was hard. That was one of the hardest jobs I've ever done.
I don't think I could do it. There's no way. I always tell people I'm terrible. Well, it's mainly sales, right? Like, what you're doing is you're selling.
It's pure sales. And again, they drop you off in a neighborhood. You're going to sit there for 2 to 3 weeks. And you're going to knock cold. They don't know who you are. They ain't never heard of you. Most of these people never heard of our company. And you'd have to walk in within 30 minutes, have them signing the contract, phone with corporate, $70 a month for a 5-year contract, locked in.